Okay to get started then? Yeah, great. All right. Well, thanks for your time, everybody. My name's Niall. I'm the project director at Evide, and the past year or so, we've been working with the FRCs in Donegal with our software impact tracker. And today, I'm going to do a quick overview of the system, answer any questions. I'm going to talk about how the Donegal groups are getting on, and how we found it, and then I'm going to, again, just take any questions you may have. And I'm going to touch briefly on their new product, which is launching later next year as well. But what I'll do is I will get started and I'll share my screen and we'll look at the software. So Impact Tracker is a piece of software, software as a service, so it's cloud-based. The software itself has been around for plus 10 years. This variation is maybe 7 years old now. It was originally developed for charity in Derry many years ago, and it grew from that. We worked primarily in the UK until a couple of years ago. The system's used throughout the sector, really. Very popular with community-based kind of organisations and charities. Very popular with counselling services, youth employability. So we do have this one-size-fits-all approach to the system where a lot of the sector, regardless of which department or area you work in, there is a lot of data collection in terms of your participants. There is tracking those participants through the different services, and there is capturing those kind of assessments and validation tools to show you that impact is being achieved. So I'm going to show you that in the system today. I'm going to show you how you can log your participants on the system.
Yeah, that page about
Sorry.
No good. No.
Sorry, can I just make sure that everybody is muted there? I can't see who's talking. Marie, maybe you can mute everybody, please. Thanks.
Great. Sorry about that, no worries. So I'm going to take you through just a kind of quick process of how the system works. And as I say, I'm going to talk about the Donegal. So the 10 FRCs in Donegal are all under the one project, and I've got their license here. I'm going to touch on that and show a bit about the reporting, the ease of reporting. First of all, I'm just going to log in. So as I say, it's cloud-based. There's a URL for your license, a secure URL. They won't have a username, password, and have a one-time password as well from their two-factor authenticator. I don't have it turned on. So for this demo today, I've taken a few names of just random FRCs to just show you how it would look from that higher level. So if I log in at a higher level, you can have as many FRCs under the one platform as you like. What this leads to is kind of consistent approach to data collection, and also makes it easier when reporting. So a project in Athlone and a project in Clones are both using the same platform, and you can share data collection tools. Means that analyzing that data once it's collected and reporting makes it a bit easier, rather than someone maybe has spreadsheets in Clones and someone's got different spreadsheet here in Westport and etc. So the thing that we go for is this kind of all in the one platform for ease of data collection, and as I say, consistent and a more standard approach. So I've got again, they're all set up in the same way. So if I click on the Boyle FRC, this is what the database looks like. So for a standard user, you would have this view where you've got your, again, I'm into super user, so I've got all these additional icons. But yeah, when I click on my homepage, I've got my notifications, I've got my calendar, I've got some outcome reporting and stats here on my homepage. I've got a section for my contacts. So this is where everyone will be stored. So participants or clients or service users, whatever term is used there, family members, staff members, facilitators, really a database to hold information on everybody. What you would have then is a setup of your programs. So your adult course, I've taken some examples from the Donegal groups, but so in here I've got adult courses, I've got a counselling program, family support, one-to-one support, youth and children, and within each one of these programs you then have a setup of the different activities. So these are the services that your participants would be engaged in. So some after schools in here, obviously under counselling, some different types of counselling, and adult courses. I've got some examples there. So we're on Boyle FRC, this test site, but if we go over to maybe Athlone FRC, again the setup will be the exact same, but they may have different services. Maybe they do support for older people, so they've got additional programs. So the structure is the same for each, and it's just the content of your delivery that would change. So again, this has got counselling, but maybe this does like play therapy. This is adult education, but maybe it does different types of adult education. The idea is that you can set up your delivery of your services in each one of your centres on your license, and you can then group them through various tools in the system to collectively report across the board. So you can use things like types. So I can tag all the counselling services across, X number of projects, and then pull the stats into one. So it makes it easy for reporting if you're looking to get, and I'll show you an example in the Donegal project. What I obviously won't be getting into, I'll be up at a higher level, so there will be no personal information, but I'll use some of their tagging tools to bring some of the data across. But how it works from a user perspective is what I'll focus on from now. So yeah, so the programs is where you set up your different programs. You can add this at any time. You have a list of activities, so just another view of the activities in one place. There's a one-to-one monitor section. So if there's any one-to-one sessions, this is again for monitoring those sessions. It's really where they're stored. There are restrictions there, and you can access that. The helpline section, there we are remodeling this for kind of the walk-ins, which are and the kind of non-client work. Right now, this is a section just for kind of anonymous or non-client or non-caseload work where, someone's looking for assistance and they phone up, you can quickly log that. The Donegal FRCs have been very good in feeding back this, that they would want something similar for their walk-ins. And then you've got 10 reporting portals. So all the data that's collected is easily reported on. Some of them are pretty straightforward. If you're looking to report on attendance, you go to attendance reports. If you want to look at your outcomes report, etc. And then there's a setup. So this is really where the system is managed. Users are created here and users are given permissions. There's flags. You can set required fields. Required fields is really handy to make sure that there's a standardized approach to data collection. It means that again, going back to that scenario I looked at, is that Athlone and clones are, they're both collecting the same level of information. So when you're reporting, you know that you're going to have a good, sample there of rich data, rather than we only collect names and gender, and maybe down here we collect names and date of birth and gender. Maybe somewhere else they collect referral information and ethnicity. So you can decide on what you want required, and it would be the same across the board, or you can restrict it by region, or you can restrict it by each centre. And here as well, you set up sharing permissions, list options, so all the drop-down lists. Again, you can customize the drop-down list so that the same values throughout the country. So again, it means that some FRC in one place isn't collecting minimal amount of data, and another one's collecting huge amounts of data. You can start populating these fields so they're shared throughout, again leading that kind of consistent and standardized approach. There's also a section here for what we call outcomes, but this is really where you would have any kind of evaluation, assessments, or outcome measure tools. So in this example, I've got the STAR set up, I've got the GAD7, parental scale, WEMWEBs, and a few other common tools here. So that's all the setup side of it. Recently, there is also your support section. But how a user would actually kind of use the system really is, once they log in, they have a database of contacts. And as I said earlier, would be storing information on anybody you work with, but let's just focus on a participant or a client at the moment. So if I look, what I can do here is quickly draw up someone's file. So if I look at Mo, for example, and they have a file here, I've got it marked as confidential so I can lock other colleagues out. I've got some information. They're also flagged. I've got their contact and personal information and their preferences. I've got them linked to organizations. I can create action plan templates. Now in this example, I've got a lot turned on, and you can turn things off and hide certain things. I've got a history of their engagements, so I know what activities, what programs, what services they've engaged in. I've got the registration and referral information. I've got any outcome measure tools and responses there. Waiting lists for any services there. Their next of kin, scan and upload documents. I've got a one-to-one section for all their case notes. So if this person is in counselling, for example, I can have access to this, and I can have quick access to their counselling sessions. Some of the feedback from Donegal has been to add further restrictions there. So that's one of the features we're bringing in, is to kind of restrict that certain sessions, certain types of services can be locked down to different staff members. So if I'm a standard user, maybe I don't need to see that Mo's in counselling, I just need to log their participation in an adult art class. So we're working on a way to hide that as well. Also on the record, there's a communication log, correspondence log, so I can log any kind of phone calls and meetings and things like that. But so the first point, starting point, is always creating a record, a new record for your participants. It's about getting them on the system, and it can be just a first name and second name, but you do have an option for all these additional fields. Now we do have fixed options on here, but we are moving away from that in the new year, where it will be more of a kind of flexible forms, where you'll be able to build your own forms. But again, there can be a standard form for each different center. But right now, for example, I can put in, let me use my son's name, I can put in, I can create statuses, I can put in their date of birth and gender identities and pronouns. I can link the staff member or key worker. I can click confidentially, lock people out. People get their own reference number. So you can see the data collection here. There's lots of possibilities: address, contact details, important information. I can then register this individual, and I can capture things like referral information, who they're referred by, when they're referred, why are they being referred. Like, every piece of information that's captured is sent to the reports. So you can start looking at patterns and trends in your data, as well as pathways into the organization, issues, why people are being referred on. It allows for lots of demographics here. So age groups, marital status, etc., the household situation, background. So I've just got some dummy data examples in here, but this is fully customizable. You've got equality and diversity, so ethnicity, religion, nationality. So lots of what would be known as Section 75 in the North. Some of those can be hidden, so you can capture employability and benefits, level of education, health issues, and medication, substance use, support, other support. You can capture the family structure, the number of family members in that, the number of children can be captured down here, and information on the children. And once they start engaging, that will start filling up. So again, you'd have to use this, but it allows for all that information to be captured. And as soon as that information is captured, then I'm just going to show you where it will correspond. That once people are on the system, you can start reporting on that data. So if I wanted to see something like how many new referrals within a time frame and who they've been referred by, I can go to one of my reports, starters, set my time, and I can start looking at all those drop downs we just looked at are then replicated here. So I can quickly load in where my referrals are coming from and how many referrals, and you can do that by gender, ethnicity, etc. You can really start breaking down the data. So the first point of data collection is always getting your contacts on the system. We do also have a web form where that allows for you build your own web form, put it on your website, people can self-refer, and they'll go on the system automatically. That's not live just yet. It's been launched in December. So once your contacts on the system, whether that's an individual family member ready to engage in some support, or if it's just a community, someone in the local community ready refer them for some counselling, it all starts in this way. Now additionally, we do have options to link families together. So if you've got two family members on, or more than one family member on the system engaging, you may have a parent in for some, parent support programs. You may have a child in for some play therapy or child counselling, or maybe they're going to the after schools. You can link them together by creating a family record. So you create a family name, and then once the family name is created, you can start linking the family members over. You can track their participation. And again, the Donegal groups have given us good feedback, and this record is currently being updated. We wanted to see a bit more on that record, so that's just what we're working on at the moment. There is waiting lists for services. So once somebody is on the system, they're really ready to engage in the service, in your services. You can straight away record an interaction and an engagement, or you can use the waiting list. So if you do have counselling services or any kind of seasonal activities that maybe you've limited numbers, you can start saying, linking this individual. So I can say they're waiting for counselling, adult counselling, and I can put them, on a waiting list for that counselling session. There is a master waiting list for monitoring. So I can monitor my waiting list and see who's waiting for what and how long they've been waiting. So again, really handy with the counselling services, and handy again with activities with adult education, things like that, when maybe there's limited numbers. So again, this is just from the main contact section, this really kind of the admin section, managing your data, without going any further and tracking those engagements. There's also organizations. You can track different organizations that you're working with, especially organizations that maybe rent space, or maybe you're a partnership with, maybe organizations that come in and hire rooms in your centre. You can set them up and you can track those as well. There's a few other bits as well. There's a pending list, centre waiting list, and there's email groups as well there. Just moving on, and again, if we look at, we'll look at in here created, once someone's on the system, as I say, they're ready to engage straight away. So if you know, I have a contact on the system and they've signed up for some one-to-one support, it's quite easy to log that. I can just go on and log my one-to-one sessions. It's counselling, it's adolescent counselling, the date and the time. So this is, you know, what a counsellor might see, or what a one-to-one practitioner, and really logging the data of that session. This would all be locked down to that counsellor, and you know, I can capture some of the issues. A lot of these things you're seeing on here is dummy data, but the structure is always the same. So for logging one-to-one work, it's the same process over and over for every participant. It's really about, you know, adding on to their file, bringing the file into one place. Another thing with system, it's about centralizing data. So, you know, moving away from having data in a spreadsheet, having data maybe written down on paper, having data maybe in a filing cabinet. It's about having it on here. So when you open someone's file, you should, if you have access, because it could be confidential, it should be quite easy to retrieve any information. If I want to see a history of their engagements, I have it all here. If I want to see, did they phone, you know, make a phone call 2 weeks ago, I've got their history here. I've got their documents uploaded here. I've got their next of kin here. I've got a history of all their engagements, all the different activities. I've got their one-to-one sessions here. If they've responded to any outcome measures or assessment tools, I've got that located here. So it's about bringing that data into one place. So every piece of information that's logged is linked back to the person's record, and also fed to the reporting, and also linked to the record of the service, if that makes sense. So yeah, so all one-to-one work is logged in the same way, and I know that's a big part of it as well, especially with the therapeutic services. So it's always, you know, onto someone's file and create a session, and that's it. For group work, it's slightly different. So if I move over to my activities, and maybe I've got some after-school clubs, and basically what I have here, can the messages, emails be sent? Yeah, there is an option to email through the system. So, for example, if I have an after-school club and the timetable changed, I can email all participants on the system who have got email opt-in ticked. It is a very basic email function, and that's another piece of work that's been upgraded at the moment. But yeah, you can. There's no individual. Well, yeah, there is an option for an individual email, but you have to create groups first. But you could email someone on an activity. So I've got IT for beginners, for example. What I can do is I've got 5 participants. Maybe today's class is cancelled. I can just email those participants, or I can select one of them to email. So there is an option there. As far as text messaging, SMS, that's not possible in the system, but as something we have in the new system launching next year. So we'll come back to your groups and how they work. Is basically you have a record for your group, whether it's an adult education class, whether it's an after school activity, whether it's a, you know, a youth activity or an older people's walking group or whatever it is. You're doing the same thing regardless of which, again, if you're in any other centre, you basically have a record for that activity. You're adding your participants, you're tracking attendance, you're marking them as complete. It's pretty straightforward, those 3 steps there. There are additional steps where you can bring in facilitators, you can bring in different outcomes for those, you can bring in funders if there are certain funders. I know Healthy Ireland is one. So, you know, you can set those up and have a list of funders who you can then choose from and assign. That would then open up funding reporting. So you can have specific reports for specific funders. But just I'll show you an example of how a group activity is managed. And this is mostly what the level of a lot of the Donegal groups are at when we start them, is getting them, trying to bring them into the group work easy first, because I think a lot of them are doing the adult education classes. A lot of them are doing the young people and children's activities like after schools and breakfast club and things like that. So it's been quite easy for them to, you know, log the participants on and then link them to the activity. So for example, if I have an after school juniors activity, I can select from my list of people and I can link them over and say, you know, they started on this date. And then what I'm doing from then is I'm doing weekly or daily attendances, just keeping the data up to date. So things that may be going into a folder or a paper, things that may be getting written down, and you know, you're not obviously able to report on that quite easily, and you're able to log them in the system. The data controller would be we would be a data processor. The data controller is those end users who are responsible for entering the data, responsible for deleting the data, and they are the owners of the data. So that wouldn't be our job, but deleting of the data is where we can help. So if you've got somebody who, they're right to erasure where they want to have the record of their information removed, we have a few options there where we can, let me show you how we work off IDs. So everything has an ID. So every person has an ID. We look at Paul 56420. So we can, if for example Paul Carter said he wanted his information deleted off the system, but you still needed his information for stats because he's been engaging on activities, we can basically clear any personal information and leave just references in place. So you still have the data there, but any kind of names, address, phone numbers, email addresses, things like that are gone from the system. But you would be the data controller making those decisions. So just back to the group activity. It's kind of like a register. So it's stuff that's been doing maybe at the moment on, as I said, writing them down and maybe saying the figures. There was 10 people here today. There was X number of people here today, that you're able to do a register and you're able to track individually who's coming and who's going. It gives a bit more accuracy in your figures whenever you're reporting. It gives you a bit more detail whenever you're looking for an overview. If you're looking at somebody's participation on an activity. So if I'm looking at Paul Carter, I can look at his file and see, well, he's doing IT beginners, he's done arts and crafts twice, and I can get a quick view on how many sessions he attended there. So it all links back to the individual. So things that may be on paper that gets the total figures get out of the spreadsheet, you can still obviously capture the total figures via the reporting, but it means that each record is up to date with their attendance data, the hours attended, and you can also you can use this report to see what works and what doesn't work. You may have some funding for certain services, and at the end of the day, you can run the report and say X number of people signed up for this, only X number attended. Was it worth it, or is it worth it, or will we over capacity there? Would that lead to lobbying for more funding for that service because it was a success? So the information, we always say, should tell a story. So by logging the basics on here, it all feeds to the reporting, and because this after school junior is linked to the youth and children, then you can run the report for youth and children across the country or wherever by region, and you can start looking at the results and what works in one place, what doesn't work in another, and sharing your information as well to see that this works for us because of this, because of that, trends and patterns. So as I keep saying, the data should always be provide knowledge, but it also always starts with this data entry side of it. And it's not easy at the start. I'm sure the Donegal groups here will tell you that. It's about getting used to the system. It's a different way of working. But yeah, once your contacts are on, you can start tracking through 1-to-1 work or group work, and the data is feeding, linking everywhere in the system. So I can look at my after school juniors, and maybe I want to look at all the attendances. So I would have a look at my, I can create a new attendance sheet. And it's basically a register. So again, I imagine this is being captured probably on paper at the moment. Whether that goes anywhere, I'm not too sure. But once it's on the system, you do it once in a couple of seconds, and that's it logged, and it's all reportable. The hours are reportable. The number of attendees are reportable. Overall journey is reportable. And what I would have is a history of all my attendances. So if you ever need to, for any kind of risk or any issues, or any kind of HR issues, you can also, all the data is just here in one place. It's quite easy to look back over a period of time and say, well, let's look at the advice clinic. Let's look at a session that happened, 2020. It's going to be here, and you should have all the information there. So the ease of retrieving data as well is another benefit. In terms of tracking your individuals, that's really it. It's via the 1-to-1 or group. There is an additional feature here, which is we call events, and this is for any activities or services that you're providing where you don't capture names, but just strictly numbers. So I'm going to call this test. So it allows for this as well. I know some of the Donegal groups are using this for room hire and that, where they're able to say how many people were attending, how many times it's been hired out, and with which organization it's been linked with as well. This can also be used for any anonymous like kind of wellness cafes or any kind of drop-in services where you're not actually registering names. Then you can use the events. While it won't be accurate because it's a new event every time, you'll still be able to capture that, and it's the scope of your work you're really capturing there. So in terms of the delivery of your services, It allows for the one-to-one work, the group work, and the events. I mentioned earlier we do have a helpline, which was designed to be for phone calls and queries and whatnot coming in through, it's called helpline. It may come on online or maybe in person. So this is a feature where you can put in the date and the time that you spent. Not necessarily the name, but you can capture demographics, and you can capture the work that you're doing there. Again, what we've been asked, the Donegal groups have asked us to open that up for the kind of walk-ins where people be walking in for any kind of support, where it's a printing facility or the admin stuff, or maybe just somebody who it's not a kind of client or a participant. So that's in development. We'll be expanding this and splitting it into two, one for the walk-ins and one for the helpline. But it'll be the same kind of structure there. That's something that we're hoping to launch in January. So once that's in place, I think that'll be all the service delivery captured there. The final piece that I'll just touch on here, and then I'll jump to the reporting, is your assessments and evaluations. So if for example, you've got a participant here who's engaging through multiple services, they're in counselling, maybe they're in adult education, maybe they've got family members in some after school class, maybe they've gone to some Parent Plus courses or whatever, that'll all be on their file, and their file will grow and grow and grow, and you'll be able to see a kind of journey there. But what you also may want to see is how are they progressing? Is there any change there? Is there any impact? And we would say the best way to capture that is through some kind of assessment tool. Obviously, you can leave your kind of narrative there and your any kind of case studies of that, and feedback can be logged via the sessions or via the correspondence log. But the outcome tools are really handy to kind of visualize change and also to kind of show progress. So I'll just show you an example here. Is regardless of which tool, I've got the outcome star set up here, as well as multiple other kind of common tools here, but I'll use star because it has been chatted about with the Donegal groups. Is it's a kind of questionnaire or assessment tool which has different areas. So this could be a questionnaire, as I said, it could be an internal in-house built questionnaire, it could be one of these commercial tools that you can buy. But on the system, it's logged in the same way. Basically, you're able to capture a baseline when someone joins, and capture where they are at that time, and then it's about tracking that individual and linking to specific programs, and they may be in for counselling, so I'm saying they're in for counselling, and I'm logging where they are at that time. And again, I'm just using the outcome star as an example. It can be any kind of tool or framework that has a list of indicators or questions with scaled responses. So I'm able to plot a baseline for this individual. I've got a table here of their scores, and I've got their total scoring. Now, this individual may continue then to engage across the services on the Family Resource Centre. So they may be, as I say, they're in counselling, and then they may join an adult education class, let's say IT for beginners. And, the more they engage, the more that they grow and progress. Excuse me. So what I'm able to do is log that. So you may have a tool that you log start, middle, end. You may have a tool where you're logging every 3 or 4 weeks. You're sitting down with this individual and you're capturing the responses. And what you're looking to capture here is growth, is progression, is change. It's another question. How many users can enter data? Any amount really. There's no limit to the number of users. On a standard license, there is a limit to, I think it's 15 users, but then you can just bolt on more users. So I'll just show you, again, I'm using the outcome star as an example, but any one of these tools works the same way. Is once you enter your second set of responses in, what the system is doing, it's using the distance travel model to show you where there's been positive change, negative change, or no change. So you can see your participants grow, and you can see it at an individual level. So I can, I may be, the key worker, or I'm working with this client, with this participants, and I can see there's growth in these areas. And I've got my tables and I've got my total scoring. Now, once that's done with every individual, that's obviously the end of the reporting. So I can look, across. Yeah, no worries. So I can look across the board at all the outcome reporting So I can look, just to give you an idea, once this level of information is captured, I hope we've got some data in here. Let me see. Yeah, I can look across my center, and I can look for positive change, negative change, no change, and in what area. I can look at the average distance traveled, and also that can be done for all FRCs, and it can be done by regions. It can be done by different programs and different types of programs. So in terms of data collection, that's everything covered, from putting your contact on and, tracking them through one-to-one work, group work, or events. I showed you a bit about the helpline, which will be able to track walk-ins, and I showed you the outcome side of it, which is the kind of assessment, evaluations, and outcomes tools. I'm just going to hop over quickly to the Donegal license without giving any, not jumping onto any personal data here, but just to show you how quickly we can pull up some of the stats. And somewhere I can go into the reporting, and I can go to an outputs report, for example, and I can quickly see how many people. I'm going to look across all the projects around a 12 or 15-month period. I know how many people are involved in after schools, and I can get a summary there. So I've told the system to look through all 10 Donegal licenses and pull back how many people are participating in after school related activities. So here they are, there's their activities, 14 different after school activities set up across Donegal, the number of times they've run and attended, the number of overall participants, the number of unique participants, and the number of families. Very quickly, this is real data that you're able to get these stats. And we have it set up in a way that maybe it's not, it's pilot phase, so we're still working things out. But again, there's options here. Again, I can say I want to look at how many people are involved in adult education. So again, I've asked the system across all the projects, participation within a time frame for adult education, and just give me a summary, and it goes and retrieves that data. So I can look at, I've got a table of all the courses that are running within my time frame, the number of activities, the number of times they're run and attended, overall participants, unique, and number of families. So unique is always counting each person once, and that's one thing the system will do. It should give you more accurate figures, so you'll know exactly how many people and how many families you're supporting within your centre and across, if it is linked by region or across the whole country or whatever. So just a couple of examples there. Of course, what I could do as well is I could break this down by demographics and start loading in, the gender or whatever it is that's been collected there. So you can see across Donegal, it's primarily female. 75% of participants are female under the adult education courses. So the data starts telling you a story there. Does that mean you need to try and make an appeal more to men, or is that your primary targets? So that's just one example of the live data on the Donegal without obviously going into their personal stuff, and that's obviously still a pilot phase. We're still figuring things out, but it just trying to show us how quickly you can pull. And that's obviously only one report out of 10, and how quickly you can start retrieving the data. So apologies if I went over there or went into a bit too much detail, but I think I've covered everything. So happy to answer any questions.
Hi, Niall.
Sorry, thanks, Niall. Sorry, Niamh, just for 1 second. There's just questions in the message chat there, Niall, as well. First, if that's okay, Niamh.
Mm-hmm.
So one question there is, can the messages, emails be sent out through the system?
Yeah, I was responding to those as I was chatting.
You got
apologies. Yeah. So I was saying that the emails, you can email, and it did show that. And the SMS isn't possible. And I did say that for the data controllers would be each center would be a data controller.
You did say that.
Yeah. And then the users I mentioned that. There's users per, there's no limit, but you start off with a basic 15 user package, and then you would just add on to that.
Yeah. Oh, just for clarity, thanks, Niall. Sorry, Niamh.
No, you're fine. I just have one question about can you put more than one type in? So you have programs there, and then you had like education and maybe health. Can you pick more than one, or is it just it has to slot into one, like education or health or?
Well, you can, and we do have clients who. So yes, you can. It's not in this example, but we can break it up into tags more than just drop downs. Yeah, that's possible.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Niamh. Eileen?
Hey, Niall, thanks for that. Niall, we currently use Salesforce in Hill Street, and we can record a lot of the data, but we can't pull it out as well as I see done on Evide. But two things. One is that we get Salesforce free because of the charities. They're part of the charity sort of donation program, and we can have up to 10 users on it for free. So that's the first thing. So does Evide do that? And then the second one is that we find that emailing our parents doesn't work because lots of parents don't check emails and don't look at emails. But if we send out a text message first, which you can do through Salesforce, then alerting them to the fact that there's an email, then they get the email. So that's the second one. Then the third one is, what's the cost of setting it up? Because I think it's more user friendly, definitely. But what would the cost be in setting it up?
Yeah, well, there's not a free version of it, but I'll answer the questions in relation to the cost first. The cost, we have I actually need to remind myself, but it's around £500. So it's in pounds. So I mean, we'd still probably, if more centres. So basically, the way our licensing works, there's 10 at the moment. Once you go through that threshold of 10 under the one project, the price comes down. If you go over 20, it comes down again, it comes down again. So it would be roughly around between €500, €600 per annum, and that would give you up to 15 users. And then it's just about whether you wanted to bolt on to that. So that's around the cost you're looking at. And again, the more the bolt on, the less the cost comes down. So we'll talk about that later. Your second question in relation to the text messaging, I've just bounced over to the new system so you can see the change in the look and the feel of the new system. This has SMS built in it. This won't be ready until April onwards. So what we will start doing is in the new year we'll start focusing 100% on our new system, which is here, and moving everybody over. And a lot of the new features, a lot of new requests that have come in, will just go on the new system. So currently, the current system used to do the text messaging. We killed that a long time ago, but yeah, it is something on the new system that is will be ready when that launches around April.
Thanks, Mike.
Maybe it's just a question to log for now. It's not directly at Niall. So I suppose my question is twofold. First of all, is it our plan to use this to replace Speak? And second of all, who pays for it? Is it each FRC, or would we be looking for TUSLA to, if we are replacing, would TUSLA pay for it? So just
I think their questions will park for now, Mike, if that's all right.
Yeah, 100%. That's what I'm saying. If we park them now, but I just want them logged.
Perfect.
While I think of it. Yeah, no better.
100%. Niamh, was your hand up from before, or again? No, that's fine. Mary.
Hi, I suppose just a question. It's quite clearly, look, there's an awful lot of detail there. My first thing is, oh my God, inputting that amount of data. Sometimes I can't even recall, recording a piece of paper who actually rang in, or just the name and stuff like that. And given, there's quite a lot that can come through a centre, it's very individual focused. I'm just wondering within it, like, there isn't a place to capture, say, policy work, or that kind of group stuff, that people come together on an issue. So it's not just it's I suppose service focus more and support, but and progression. And I get the progression side, but also, I suppose, from a community development perspective, when we're looking at trying to change things, could be around housing issues, health issues, all of those, and people come together, and the focus isn't on the individual but on the needs of the community.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the issues we're working on with some of the feedback from Donegal groups. There is things missing. The Mehills we're working on with them, as I mentioned, the walk-ins. But yeah, you could still log that. It's just how it's reported, because ultimately it's still people coming together for a service, even though the main outcome might be to benefit the community. It's really, we would say, well, what do you want to see from that? What do you want to report on from that? And we would find a solution to it. But it can be, obviously the work being put in can be captured, but it's more, it seems that the outcome from that is something that we would need to have a look at, is how you want that displayed or demonstrated. What is the outcome? But yeah, I'm 100% sure it can be captured, but maybe we don't have any. That's what I'm saying. The pilot phase in Donegal is really kind of us figuring out. You're right, and it is an individualized and service focused. So it's more about what do you guys need, and let's say for the past year they've been feeding back this, and we're still making changes, and those changes will go on in the next year, and I imagine the changes will take over to the new system, and we'll just keep updating it until we get it spot on for you. That's the plan.
Thanks, Niall. I'll just head over to Fergal to finish up there.
Yeah, I could stop sharing now.
Sure. Sorry, yeah, I wasn't. I don't have anything to add. I just maybe thank Niall. We can have more discussion. Maybe today probably we have a busy agenda, so we can have more discussion another day. But I just want to thank Niall for his time and coming in. Thank for his time and what he's done with the Donegal FRCs, and I suppose we'll take the discussion onward from there. I don't know, Kathleen, if you want to say anything, just because Kathleen is from Donegal.
Yeah. Kathleen. Sorry, I thought I had was on mute there, but anyway, I wasn't. We had our new landlords in, but now that the rest of the FRCs would probably be able to give a better update, but we only started using it the later half of this year. So Niall's coming again next week to do more training with us, but you can see that it will be good. It will be a good system. Nobody has any serious issues as far as I know, Niall, at the minute with it. I don't think. You're just changing the stuff as we're coming up with.
Yeah, I mean, there was
different things we need, and
yeah, that's how it's just listen to feedback. We need.
It takes a while to get used. Just takes a while to get used to it,
Yeah.
It takes
it's probably worth ventilating, Niall, that obviously your company was subject to a cyber attack or a ransomware attack, and you probably have learning on how all that went and how it all panned out. I'm sure it was a stressful time for you.
Yeah. I mean, I'll touch on that briefly. Not necessarily us, but more the server hosts that we used were with a cyber attack. But there was multiple companies that were impacted. It ended up that it wasn't anything really more than a scare, but obviously there was media attention, things like that. Since then, we've went through an audit. We've changed our server provider. We've server hosts and providers. We've to Microsoft Azure, and we've also split the data up where it was all stored in Derry and the data center here. Where so going to one of the kind of big names is should give people a bit of trust there. We've also employed multiple kind of data protection or data kind of cyber forensic experts to kind of review our system and setup. We through that audit. We also have pen testing done, which is basically paying someone to try and break into your system to make sure it's safe. We've got additional accreditation, which is UK based, but it's called Cyber Essentials Plus, which is again an external organization or third party coming in and auditing your setup and system. So while there was no impact really, it was a lesson for us, but it was also we are say that our software itself was not compromised. It's just if the way servers work is that that software is hosted on a server, and the server company, which is Atlas servers, which are based in Northern Ireland based, so we used them for around 8 years, and we've now obviously that's where the incident happened. We were one of a couple of organizations who were impacted, but as I said, it ended up that it wasn't as bad as the news reports, and it was quite traumatic. Yeah, it was, and it was but it was a learning lesson more than anything that we it's a very costly thing as well. You're basically paying people a lot of money to try and bust into your systems, but it means that once you have all those, you can be confident in knowing that your system, your setup is secure. As I said, we moved to Microsoft Azure. That's still in transition because it takes a couple of months to get that right, but knowing as well that we're with Microsoft servers, it spreads confidence maybe within our users, knowing that they're with one of the kind of leading tech figures in the industry. So yeah, let's say it's been a learning lesson for us, but we've come out the other side, and a lot of new procedures in place and policies and that as well. and happy to share that with anybody as a learning thing about, you know, internal kind of policies and things like that as well. And we try to carry that out with every training session as well. As Kathy will know, the last time I was there, saying about, you know, having strong passwords, two-factor turned on, and you know, things like that there. But yeah, again, as I said, I'm happy to share our individual experiences with that with anybody if they'd like to know a bit more. It's always good to share, I think.
Thanks, Niall. That's everything, I think.
Yeah,
Great.
perfect. Thanks,
All
Niall.
right, thanks everybody. Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, Niall.